Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching The Wire Wrap. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta. This is, of course, our weekly news show where we bring you the top political developments of the week in the run-up to the Lok Sabha elections. Today we are being joined by Shobhana Nair. She's a deputy editor at The Hindu, and Deepanshu Mohan. He's professor and dean at the O.P Jindal Global University. And we are also being joined by our West Bengal reporter, Joydeep Sarkar. He's joining us online. Just to give our viewers a sense of what we are starting with, which is the big news of the day that's coming in, is that TMC strongman Sheikh Shahjahan has been arrested today, 55 days after he went absconding. Now remember, he had gone absconding when Enforcement Directorate officials had gone to his house to in connection with an alleged ration scam case. Now after that, of course, various developments have happened and he was absconding after allegations of sexual assault and land grab came up in Sandeshkhali in West Bengal, and the TMC, of course, facing the fire from opposition parties including the BJP and the left in West Bengal, which have accused the TMC and the Mamata Banerjee government of protecting Sheikh Shahjahan, who had been absconding, and the BJP particularly had accused her of not being harsh enough on her own local leaders who were accused of sexual assault as well as land grab. And they have raised questions of law and order in the state and the fact that women's safety is such a big concern in the state at the moment. But of course, the big news today is that the Trinamool Congress has said that Sheikh Shahjahan has been arrested. And let's go over to Joydeep on this. Joydeep, आज शेख शाहजहां अरेस्ट हो चुके हैं, उनको गिरफ्तार किया गया है और तृणमूल कांग्रेस की तरफ से ये बोला गया था कि कलकत्ता हाई कोर्ट का एक ऑर्डर था इसी महीने का, जिसमें उन्होंने बोला था कि उनके खिलाफ कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया जा सकता। अब कुछ ही दिन पहले कलकत्ता हाई कोर्ट ने ये कहा है कि उनके खिलाफ एक्शन लिया जा सकता है और अभी तृणमूल कांग्रेस कह रही है कि शेख शाहजहां अरेस्ट हो चुके हैं। तो अभी परिस्थिति क्या है, थोड़ा बताइए हमारे दर्शकों को।
इस वक्त संदेशखाली इलाका का सिचुएशन है। वहाँ का 49 इलाका में 144 फिर नया से फिर आज सुबह से उसका लागू किया 144। वहाँ पे ज्यादा पुलिस वहाँ पे घुसा है और नॉर्थ 24 परगना और साउथ 24 परगना से बहुत कंपनी पुलिस ले आई और उसका गांव में उसका घुसा दिया। आज 56 दिन के बाद जब शाहजहां को आज अरेस्ट किया था तो हम लोग देखा सुबह पे जैसे कोई वीआईपी आ रहा है, ऐसा ही पूरा ट्रीटमेंट था पूरा इलाका में। पूरा पुलिस जैसे कोई लॉयर भी घुस नहीं सका उसका अंदर में। 2-4 लॉयर के बाद और पुलिस ऑफिसर का बाद किसी का घुसने नहीं देता बसीरहाट जुडिशियल जो कोर्ट वहां पे। तो उसके बाद सुबह 10:30 बजे शेख शाहजहां को आई, जैसे कोई वीआईपी है उसका कोई नहीं पकड़ा, कोई पुलिस भी उसको टच नहीं किया, स्मार्टली आया और उसको 2 मिनट के अंदर वहां से निकल गया। उस रिपोर्टर लोग उनको पूछताछ किया था, किसी का बात नहीं किया। उसके बाद आप जो सुनाई दे रहा है क्या उसका 10 दिन का किस्ती हुआ है और अब सीआईडी उसको अपना हिफाजत में लेना चाहता है। लेकिन कल का वेस्ट बंगाल पुलिस की तरफ से एक प्रेस वालों से बात करने के बाद वहां के एक आईजी की तरफ से एक ऑफिशियल बोला कि आप लोग इसको पूछ रहा था क्यों इतने दिन अरेस्ट नहीं किया। 56 दिन हो गया तो उन लोग भी ये भी बोला ये तो 5 जनवरी ईडी की ऑफिशियल लोग और सीआरपीएफ के ऊपर हमला किया। लेकिन उसके बाद उन लोग नजात और संदेशखाली थाना में एक एफआईआर किया था ईडी की डिप्टी डायरेक्टर। उसके बाद ईडी ने कलकत्ता हाई कोर्ट में इस केस पर एक स्टे ऑर्डर मांगा था, उसलिए इसको अरेस्ट करने में हम लोग रोक लगा दिया था क्योंकि कुछ लॉ का प्रॉब्लम है। इसके बाद उन लोग ये भी क्वेश्चन तुला है क्या ईडी क्यों नहीं अरेस्ट करता, क्योंकि ईडी क्यों क्या इतना बड़ा क्या है क्वेश्चन है कि क्यों ईडी इतना बड़ा अटैक होने के बाद उन लोग शाहजहां का अरेस्ट क्यों नहीं करता, इतने दिन उन लोग भी क्यों चुप रहा। कलकत्ता पुलिस और वेस्ट बंगाल की पुलिस की तरफ से आज ये भी क्वेश्चन उठाया। लेकिन एक सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन है क्या जो तृणमूल का ऑफिशियल लोग जो स्पोक्समैन है कुणाल कि 7 दिन के अंदर शाहजहां को अरेस्ट कर लेगा, वो भी हुआ। और सबसे मजा की बात है क्या बंगाल का जो अपोजिशन लीडर है भाजपा का शुभेंदु अधिकारी, उन्होंने जो ट्वीट करता है वही होता है। उन्होंने एक दिन पहले ट्वीट किया था कब अरेस्ट होगा शाहजहां, उसके बाद उसको क्या होगा क्या होने वाला है पहले ही बता देता है उनका ट्वीट अकाउंट पे और वही हो रहा है। ये एक मजाक की बात है बंगाल का पॉलिटिक्स में। लेकिन अब सिचुएशन बहुत गंभीर है। संदेश खाली और उसकी जो सारी इलाका है वहाँ पे पब्लिक भी प्रोटेस्ट पर रास्ता में निकला है। जो इलाका है जो जिसको एक खेलने का माठ था उसको भी उन लोग एक्वायर्ड किया था, उसको आज सुबह पे गांव का महिला लोग तोड़ दिया। और कुछ जगह पे ऐसा कोई झमेला हो रहा है। बहुत टेंशन है इलाका में, ज्यादा पुलिस भी गया और लेफ्ट का एक लीडरशिप भी वहां पे आज घुस गया। उन लोग भी एक पॉलिटिकल मीटिंग कर रहा है।
Joydeep, आप पे वापस आएंगे कुछ ही देर में. Shobhana, I want to get you in on this, as Joydeep was just mentioning that it's almost like a game that has been set already. The way that Sheikh Shahjahan was arrested this morning, and TMC of course facing fire from opposition parties, and as Joydeep was just mentioning that Kunal Ghosh had said after the Calcutta High Court order that he will be arrested in a few days, and almost right on cue he was arrested today. The BJP of course is trying to make meal out of this and capitalize on the law and order situation in West Bengal, and trying to show how the only female chief minister in the country is not serious about women's issues. Do you see the BJP gaining out of this in the upcoming Lok Sabha elections, especially because West Bengal is a state where the BJP has not managed to make a dent as it would have liked to?
Sravasti, I beg to differ a little bit. If we were to see, since 2016, the BJP has been on an upward swing in the state. And if I were to look at the figures, they speak for itself. In 2019, the gap between BJP and TMC was merely 3%. And BJP managed to get 18 seats. Now, with this whole Sandeshkhali episode, where the BJP has, obviously what get raised questions is that the entire BJP leadership did not go to Manipur, but they ensured that the entire brigade of their women ministers, including Smriti Irani and Nirmala Sitharaman, everyone made a beeline to West Bengal, and they have successfully managed to draw to sort of set a communal narrative, because if you were to see, Shahjahan Sheikh is not alone in this whole episode. There are other members also who have been accused of similar charges of extortion and of molesting women and various other things, but they have the BJP has only been focusing on Shahjahan Sheikh to sort of establish a narrative that this is my Muslim versus tribal sort of, that TMC believes in appeasement policy, and therefore TMC was shielding Shahjahan Sheikh and projecting TMC as this Muslim appeasing party. And can this benefit the BJP? Most likely it will, in even if and also see, politically speaking, TMC MP from that area is Nusrat Jahan, who we have barely seen in the parliament. She's not active in the area, so TMC is finding it very tough to defend its territory. And obviously TMC finds itself isolated, and BJP is definitely and the attack by the left and the Congress, the fact that the alliance is not happening, the fact that Congress is not, TMC and Congress have not been able to work out a deal, will have an impact. And the anti-TMC votes will, with especially that till now we had a hope that could divide between two blocks of one, the left and the Congress, and the TMC, the BJP. After this episode, there is a good likelihood that they will all shift en masse to the BJP.
जयदीप, आप पे वापस आना चाहूँगी. शोभना जो बता रही है कि ये जो इंसिडेंट हुआ है संदेशखाली में, ये बीजेपी के लिए एडवांटेज हो सकता है आने वाले दिनों में. जैसे हम लोकसभा चुनाव की तरफ बढ़ते जाए, बीजेपी इसको बहुत अच्छी तरीके से यूज़ कर रही है. और टीएमसी का जो रिएक्शन रहा है, उनका जो एक्शन लेने में इतना टाइम उन्होंने लगा दिया है, और जैसे आप भी पहले बता रहे थे 55 दिन के ऊपर हो गए उसके बाद शेख शाहजहां आज अरेस्ट हुए हैं. और और बहुत ही क्लियर तरीके से देखा जाए तो जो बीजेपी की तरफ से और लेफ्ट पार्टीज़ की तरफ से जो आरोप आ रही थी कि टीएमसी शेख शाहजहां को शील्ड कर रही थी, और आज जैसे आप बता रहे थे जब वो अरेस्ट हुए, वो जो अगर हम वीडियो देखें तो वो जैसे आप बता रहे थे एकदम मजाकिया लग रहा था कि वो एकदम अपने चौड़ में आए और सब स्माइल करके चले गए। तो आगे वाले दिनों में ये जो पूरा मुद्दा है संदेशखाली में, आपको क्या, आपके हिसाब से क्या लगता है, क्या लोकसभा चुनाव में कैसे प्रभाव पड़ेगी? क्या ममता बनर्जी इसका कीमत चुकाना पड़ेगा उनको?
जैसे संदेशखाली इलाका में बीजेपी का एक बहुत बड़ा गेम प्लान था, वो बहुत दिन से कोशिश कर रहा है। 2013 साल में पश्चिम बंगाल का जो विधानसभा है वहां पे संदेशखाली का एमएलए था निरापद सरदार। उन्होंने एक क्वेश्चन उठा वहां पर असेंबली में तोला था, जो वहां पे लड़की लोग पर ऐसा हमला हो रहा है और जिन लड़की लोग प्रोटेस्ट कर रहा है उसका गैंग रेप करने का डायरेक्ट हुमकी दे रहा है। कौन कौन दे रहा है उसका नाम भी उन्होंने बंगाल का असेंबली में बोला था। उसके बाद उसका माइक काट कर दिया था। इसका रिकॉर्ड है बंगाल का असेंबली में। तो इसके बाद देखा गया है जो वो निरापद सरदार नाम का वो इसका एमएलए का घर भी तोड़ दिया। उसके बाद वो इलाका से भाग गया क्योंकि उनका जान भाग खतरा में था। कौन लोग इस काम किया था? देखा, एक नंबर का नाम है अजीत माइती। ये अजीत माइती कौन है? अब वो तृणमूल का लीडर है, उसको भी पब्लिक बहुत हैकल किया था। उसका पहले वो आरएसएस का लीडर था, उस इलाका में वो आरएसएस करता था। वो बीजेपी में वो ज्वाइन किया था। वो भी कबूल किया जब पब्लिक उसको 2 दिन का पहले पिटाई कर रहा था, तो उन्होंने ये भी कबूल किया कि हम इतने दिन जो टाइम पाइप में जो हम हमारा पॉलिटिकल अवस्थान था हमारा बीजेपी पार्टी, उनसे हम बहुत प्रॉफिट करने के लिए हम तृणमूल में आया था, लेकिन ये भी मेरा गलती हो गया, इसलिए हम आज फंस गया। तो यही एक घटना है कि ये लोग पहले जो शिबू सरदार, जो उत्तम हाजरा, ये सब नाम का जो जिन लोगों को पे सेक्सुअल एसेप्ट का जो कंप्लेन है, इन लोग तो पहले तो बीजेपी के साथ जुड़ा था। उसके बाद शाहजहां इस टीम को लेकर इस इलाका में प्रॉन जो इसको इंपोर्ट करने का जो व्यवसाय इसको लगा दिया, क्योंकि यहाँ पे पूरा चास जमीन जो है बहुत बड़ा चास जमीन है। यहाँ पे चास में प्रॉफिट किसान को नहीं मिलता था, इसलिए शाहजहां उन लोगों को समझाया दे दो, और उसको जमीन को लेके उसको कुछ पैसा भी किसी को नहीं दिया, उसको वहां पर पॉन्ड बनाया। उसके बाद उस वहां पर मशीन लगाया और वहां पर जो प्रॉन चाष उसका शुरू किया था। इसको हर महीना में कई सौ करोड़ का प्रॉफिट करता है इन लोग, और इसका एक सिंडिकेट भी था यहाँ के ऊपर तक। ये बहुत यहाँ पर जो इलाका का 6 ब्लॉक का पूरा चाष जमीन इन लोग लूट लिया था। तो इसका जो लूटने का सिंडिकेट है, इसमें बीजेपी का जो लोकल लीडर लोग है उन लोग भी शामिल हुआ था, क्योंकि इनका जो फिनेंशियल प्रॉफिट इन लोगों को सबको मिलता था। इसके साथ इन लोग वो जो लड़की लोगों के ऊपर टर्चार, पब्लिक को हैरेसमेंट, जमीन लूट लेता है, वेज काट लेता है, ये सब कर रहा है। का इसका अपना का जो जो पॉलिटिकल पावर है, उसका अपना का पावर है, इसको दिखाने के लिए जैसे कोई पूरा गांव वाले डरता है इन लोगों को, ऐसा एक सिचुएशन इन लोग तैयार किया था। और इसके साथ ये भी सही है, लोकल पुलिस स्टेशन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, मेनली ब्लॉक लैंड एंड रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट का एक बड़ा जो पोर्शन है इन लोगों के साथ मिला था। नहीं तो कैसे एक जमी का चरित्र बदल जाता है, जमी का जो मालिक उसका नाम बदल जाता है गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल रिकॉर्ड से। ये भी एक बड़ा घोटाला है। लेकिन ये आपने सही बोला कि बंगाल में ये संदेशखाली और ये जो सराउंडिंग आइसलैंड है, इसको टारगेट किया था भाजपा ने, और उसके लिए इसका ग्राउंड वर्क बहुत दिन से कर रहा था। यहाँ पे अपोजिशन था सीपीएम, उन लोग सीपीएम जो भगा दिया, उन लोग को जो इलाका है उन लोग उसका अपोजिशन उन लोग बन गया, और उसी इलाका में इन लोग इतने दिन चुप था क्योंकि इन लोग मिल गया था तृणमूल के साथ लूटने के लिए। जब लूटा खत्म हुआ, जब क्योंकि इन लोग आज प्रोटेस्ट कर रहा है, क्या मजा की बात है कि जो प्रॉन इन लोग इंपोर्ट करता था इसमें एक वायरस निकल गया, और वायरस घुसने के बाद जो इसका यहाँ पर जितना पॉन्ड है, जो जितना चासी है, सबका हाल खराब हो गया। तो अब लोग इन लोग देखा का प्रॉन में प्रॉफिट नहीं हो रहा है, तो हम लोग क्या करेगा? तो उन लोग फिर आ गया जो तृणमूल का जो एंटी ग्रुप है, शाहजहां का एंटी ग्रुप, उन लोग बोलता है कि हम लोग आदि तृणमूल, ये आदि तृणमूल के साथ आरएसएस का एक पोर्शन, उन लोग मिलजुल के इलाका में पहला शाहजहां का खिलाफ प्रोटेस्ट शुरू किया था। इसके साथ और कुछ लोग था जिन लोग इन लोग से मिला था, ये लोग लोकल जो इन लोगों को जमीन कर लिया था, इन लोग को भी शामिल कर रहा था। लेकिन अब सिचुएशन है क्या, आरएसएस के इतने जो प्लान है, इतना काम करने के बाद इन लोग 100% प्रॉफिट नहीं है। क्योंकि ये इलाका में बहुत पुराना जो किसान आंदोलन की जगह है, जो आइसलैंड है, ये तेभागा का आंदोलन हुआ है। जो पुराना आदमी लोग है, इन लोग बोलता था क्या इन लोग जितना टॉर्चर किया था 2011 साल के बाद, क्या पुराना जो आदमी लोग इन लोग यहाँ से निकल गया। और इतने सारे लोग ये गांव में है, वो मैक्सिमम हो गया क्या माइग्रेंट वर्कर, उन लोगों का घर में नहीं था, उन लड़की लोग घर में रहता था, और ये सुजोग में इन लोग इस लड़की को टॉर्चर किया था। तो यही तो सिचुएशन है यहाँ पर। आरएसएस तो बहुत कोशिश कर रहा था, उसका और एक एनजीओ है, उन लोग भी घुस के रहा था। और हम पहले बताया जो बंगाल में काल क्या हो रहा है, इसका पब्लिक जानता है। का अपोजिशन आरएसएस बीजेपी का लीडर जो शुभेंदु अधिकारी पहले तृणमूल का लीडर था, इनके ट्वीट पर इन्हें बोल देता है काल क्या होने वाला है, कब पकड़ेगा शाहजहां को, शाहजहां अब कहाँ है, किसका हिरासत में है। ये कैसे होता है? एक ऑपोजिशन का लीडर कैसे बता सकता है? और वो जो भी बोलता है वैसा ही होता है। ये तो सबसे बड़ा एक आश्चर्य का बात है। बंगाल का आदमी लोग इसको भी सोचता है क्या ये एक साजिश चल रहा है क्या? तो इस ऐसा सिचुएशन है संदेशखाली और सराउंडिंग इलाका में। आप किसान लोग और गांव वालों ने सब मिलजुल के प्रोटेस्ट करने का कोशिश कर रहा था, लेकिन आज 49 आइसलैंड और सराउंड इलाका में पूरा 144 लागू हो गया और बहुत पुलिस अंदर में घुसा, तो टेंशन बहुत बढ़ गया।
So we will be keeping an eye on the developments in Sandeshkhali, as Joydeep was just mentioning that Section 144 has been imposed. There's a large police presence, and things are tense in the area as of now. Thank you so much, Joydeep, for joining us, and he will be continuing to report on this. So you can read his reports by going on to thewire.in. Now, moving on to the second issue that we are wanting to cover on today's episode is, of course, the Rajya Sabha elections that took place on Tuesday. And just to tell our viewers that these elections took place in 3 states, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, as well as Himachal Pradesh. And we saw cross-voting defining these elections in all these 3 states. And what's interesting is that while the BJP gained in Himachal Pradesh from cross-voting and Congress's Abhishek Manu Singhvi lost out over there, it also lost from cross-voting in Karnataka with two of its MLAs, one S.T. Somshekhar, who voted for the Congress candidate, and another MLA abstaining. Meanwhile, in Uttar Pradesh, the BJP once again has gained from cross-voting from Samajwadi Party MLAs, and it has won 8 of the 10 seats that were up for grabs, and the Samajwadi Party has only managed to get 2 out of its 3 candidates elected. So just to come to you, Shobhana, on this, first of all, of course, these 3 states, we saw cross-voting across all these 3 states, but it is Himachal Pradesh where the results have been most dire in a sense. The Congress not only lost its candidate, but is also possibly staring at a loss of its government in the state. Even though today, just to give our viewers a sense of what has just happened before we started recording this, is that the speaker has disqualified the 6 Congress MLAs who had cross-voted. But how do you see these developments in Himachal Pradesh, and what went wrong for the Congress in your view, and what do you see going ahead?
What went wrong for the Congress? There's just one simple answer to that they ignored the problem on the ground. Now, this is not something that has suddenly happened. The situation was volatile in Himachal for past several weeks, and the Congress knew it very well. And the indication, the evidence that points to this fact is when the Congress was looking for a Rajya Sabha berth for Sonia Gandhi, and it was decided that the party will bring her to Rajya Sabha from one of the northern states. They had 2 options in front of them, Rajasthan and Himachal Pradesh. But the leadership knew well that the MLAs in Himachal Pradesh are not particularly happy with the chief minister. And there is a whole barrage of complaints against him. And which is why the former president was nominated by the party from Rajasthan. So this is something that the party knew was afoot and chose to ignore. So this is just a culmination of that. The whole episode is a culmination of the Congress's decision to not interfere and not do anything.
Okay, Deepanshu, I want to bring in you on this as well, that cross voting is something that has defined these three state elections, Rajya Sabha elections, whether it's Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, or Himachal Pradesh. And we've seen, particularly in Himachal Pradesh, after losing, the Congress leaders said that this is a very leaders should introspect and what it means for things for our democracy. So, how do you see this new feature of cross voting that has become so common, and what does it imply for elections going forward?
Well, I mean, the short answer to that is that clearly the principal opposition party and what we often see as the grand old party has had a serious leadership problem in terms of being able to resonate with what its organizational structure commands. I mean, basics. I'm not coming in from looking at what the field is communicating to any one of us, but any organization that finds it difficult to be able to communicate effectively with its MLAs, and at the same time with not just its elected leadership but its cadre, those who are on the ground, it creates a lot of problem for you be able to command, consolidate and control. And the Congress has not been able to do that across almost any of the states where it has been in power. On the contrary, I mean, the BJP has, if you see right now, I mean, the Prime Minister doing so many events in south of India is a testament in point that wherever it doesn't find itself consolidating power, it makes more of an effort. Bengal, we've just heard how the BJP has been competing against the TMC. So, I mean, if you're in a sort of a grand illusion of your own that somehow you'll be able to have people's preference to be able to vote in you back in power without looking at what the leadership is communicating and your own sort of cadre it's going to be an issue. I do, however, would like to point out that there is somewhere a juridical issue here. Maharashtra, we saw what happened, and at the same time when the matter went to the Supreme Court, we saw that the current Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, did not act in to impose the grounding of the anti-defection law. Now that's given a bad precedence of sorts for other states, and the BJP to almost get this as a free hand for horse trading as a practice to promote. I think the courts have a lot to play as a role in terms of coming in strong in ensuring that an elected government, and especially the people's mandate, is respected. I mean, if the courts start acting in the interest of the executive than the people, then at the end of the day, whether it's the Congress or any other party, I mean, you'd be vulnerable in that position. We hear often rumors and reports around how our MLAs in many areas are also under the same level of vulnerability. So I don't think, I mean, there is a clear leadership problem, which we I think need to be honest and clear about. And there needs to be a larger conversation of what's really happening with the Congress running up to the general election. But beyond that, there's also a larger institutional failure, which is causing the democratic backsliding that we're seeing right now to the extent that it is.
As Deepanshu was just talking about the democratic backsliding because of the anti-defection law not really being enforced, and but the other part of this whole development, Shobhana, I want to get your perspective on this, is the fact that the BJP is of course celebrating the results of the Rajya Sabha elections, and now the celebrations is also centered around the fact that they will just be 4 seats short in the Rajya Sabha. So how do you see these elections playing out vis-a-vis its majority in the Rajya Sabha? Is it going to give it an upper hand, and how will that play out in the Lok Sabha elections too?
Yeah, so let me put this in the right perspective. Yes, the BJP along with its allies is now just 4 seats short of majority in the Rajya Sabha, but this is not a huge jump. In 2019 too, along with its allies, it had 115 members, which was, say, a few more seats less than what they are right now, a gap of 2 seats. BJP won 2 more seats than it was stipulated to win as per its strength in various assemblies. And what one has to understand why, as you were just mentioning, that BJP does not leave any stone unturned to consolidate power wherever possible. So if you were to look at Rajya Sabha, in the last 10 years, there are 2 points that I want to make. One is, in the last 10 years, despite the ruling party's efforts, it has still not reached the majority mark. It is still four seats short, and this is on the strength of multiple victories in state assembly election. This has not happened. The second point that I want to make here is that for want of majority, no government business has been stalled in Rajya Sabha. There are, to my mind, there are only two instances which come to me where the opposition has managed to embarrass the government. One was in 2015 when Sitaram Yechuri, General Secretary of the Communist Party, successfully moved a motion against the President's address, underlining corruption and black money as the issues. And the second time that the opposition came close to embarrassing the government was in July 2019 when Triple Talaq bill was moved. And at that time, one must remember that most of the government BJP allies, including Biju Janata Dal, TRS, whom we better know today as Bharat Rashtra Samiti, and JDU and AIDMK, they were all opposed to the criminality clause in the Triple Talaq. And even then, if I recall the numbers correctly, the opposition got 89 votes and the BJP got 94 votes. And that's the last time the two have sort of looked each other in their eyes, and the opposition did some came close to challenging the government. And ever since then, it has been a sort of a downward spiral for the opposition. Their ranks have been atrophying endlessly. And interesting thing is that in the Triple Talaq vote, there were 30 opposition MPs who were missing, who did not vote. And today, if we were to look at the BJP side, majority of those 30 we will find sitting on their benches, including Praful Patel, who was, NCP was at the forefront of organizing this challenge, but Mr. Patel was absent that day. So that is the other point that I would like to.
So these are very interesting points that Shobhana and Deepanshu are both raising, that Rajya Sabha numbers, the BJP was never short of numbers as such, and whether a majority is going to yield some widespread changes, it doesn't seem likely, because it has been able to get its legislations through irrespective. The other big news that we've seen over the course of this week is that the centre has released the data of the All India Household Consumption Expenditure Survey 2022 to 2023, and this was released after a gap of 11 years. Just to tell our viewers about the major findings of this, among other findings, the data reveals that the poorest 5% of India spend merely an average of rupees 46 daily in rural areas compared to rupees 67 in urban areas, as against the richest 5% whose daily consumption is rupees 350 in rural areas and rupees 700 in urban areas. Now, this data, of course, shows a huge inequality in incomes. Deepanshu, I want to bring you in on this. How do you see these figures? What are the big takeaways from this, if you could break it down for us?
So, for the benefit of the viewers, I would probably say that anything that has to do with discussion around poverty estimates from the consumption expenditure in the way it is currently made available would be clearly peddling fiction. There's a statistical reason to it, which is a long one, but the short answer is the quality of data that is available right now, because of a very different and changed methodology in the way the consumption expenditure was conducted in 2022-23, of which we know the results now. There's another consumption expenditure happening in 23, which the results of which we will know only end of 24 hopefully, or later than that. We would be only able to then get the unit level data to make any realistic estimate of what has happened to those who are below 5%, and whether the poverty level in any way has changed in terms of the reality of what this group is. What we know, however, is that the consumption expenditure for the bottom 5% has in rural areas, of course, increased. The rural consumption level has gone up as compared to urban consumption. For a lot of people, what it means is that the urban areas are not doing well. If you were to ask what's really happening, when rural consumption going up may feel or give that sense that oh, if the rural consumption is going up, that means the rural areas or those in the rural population would be doing very well. And the answer to that is no. If you look at the real adjusted for inflation numbers, it's 2.5% of what you see in the urban areas, the consumption expenditure rise, and in the rural areas it's 3.5%. Now for an economy which is growing at 6%, 3.5% rise in expenditure of a decade is really not that much to talk about. It says that we are underweighting in terms of the potential that clearly consumption expenditure was, and this is where I think any relative comparison to what and how the economy was doing back until the 2011-12 data may throw insights. The rural and urban consumption expenditure in both of those areas at that period of time was doing reasonably well across income groups. Now this is where I think it's important to take this data and look at what other macroeconomic realities are. So you see real wages, which is the income that income classes are earning, across income groups has been stagnating. But the worst effect of that is for those who are earning, let's say in a monthly level, जो 5,000 से कम कमा रहे हैं और जिनकी इनकम 1 लाख के ऊपर है, you'll find that 1 लाख के ऊपर वाली जिनकी भी इनकम है, they are doing considerably well, and their perception of the economy is also very well. In the sense they expect 50% of them in the RBI consumer survey expect the economy to do well over time. However, if you look at the bottom 5%, which we are talking about in terms of those less than 5,000 rupees income, 60% have said that they've experienced worsening in their economic condition. Now this is where these insights across income groups on what their perception of the economy should lead us to the consumption expenditure data to have a more granular level understanding. I am surprised and shocked actually that the Prime Minister would sort of peddle fiction around how poverty level has come down without having any idea that the poverty estimates that we are using are of 2011 and 12 line. It's not at all consistent with how the survey has been done. And finally, I think what is also an important thing to note is the current government in 2017 and 18 had not accepted the results of the consumption expenditure that was coming. So they were involving a changed methodology to, of course, alternatively look for a better consumption expenditure outcome, which is fair enough. I mean, changing methodology is not an issue, but we should have a disclaimer somewhere which talks about where in the process of statistical scrutiny some of these processes have been changed. I think without that we'll never get any sort of a tangible idea in a statistical infrastructure like India, where our quality of data coming out right now is the poorest it has been in post-independent India history.
It's very important points that you're raising, of course, about the fact that the methodology is problematic and whether that needs to be looked at. But of course, the other major takeaway of this data is that the Niti Aayog CEO recently stated that poverty in India is now down to just 5%, and he has applauded the government for achieving this feat. But recently, a write-up that was done by economist Santosh Mehrotra for The Wire has stated that the entire household consumption expenditure survey does not mention poverty anywhere. So how must one see this whole poverty figure that is being peddled, and how did the Niti Aayog come to this figure?
So one clarification is I didn't mention that the methodology itself is problematic. It's a changed one, and we need to know with both the surveys done by the end of the, let's say, next year, when both databases are there, that what is the change that you see in this consumption expenditure survey as against to what we saw previously. So it's only then we'll have some realistic idea. On poverty, I think, as I said, there is clearly a hot election season that is reeling the government to peddle whatever rhetorical narrative that can come in. We know this because the finance minister spoke about the multidimensional poverty index that the Niti Aayog had produced.
But that gave another figure of poverty.
Exactly, right? but the common line is that poverty in India has reduced under the Modi government, and that everything that has happened before that was not sort of comparable to that. If you ask in absolute numbers, yes, there is definitely poverty reduction, but it matters, of course, degrees, extent, and the way in which we are measuring that and for whom. I'll give you a short example. Subsidies, right? So we talk about free ration. that the government is spending on free ration for 800 million people, and what is that going to do in the times of basically improving the expenditure of these groups. Now the consumption expenditure survey data tells us very interestingly that only 68 rupee per capita in terms of expenditure imputed value के हिसाब से is increasing for this group which is getting that subsidy. However, other classes are getting 85 to 86 rupees per capita, that is their expenditure is increasing by that level, which means, I mean, any person could draw this analysis in a very clear way that the actual benefit of that free ration is not reaching to the welfare group in which to whom it is intended. See, that's where consumption expenditure data in India is so important in telling us what is your target beneficiary and what is it actually doing, whether it is improving the life or quality of lives of that group or not. So I think we need conversations like these to happen more often in interpreting not just maybe the macro figures, cross relating it with other realities, employment mein kya ho raha hai, wages mein kya ho raha hai. The urban story is telling us that the urban economy in India is not doing well. That's the economy which has created the most jobs. It creates for farmers the demand that they are able to produce. So everything is linked in India's sort of post-90s growth model to the urban economy. So if urban consumption is not rising, it means very clearly that there is something wrong, structurally wrong with the economy. And I think this is a larger, I think, dialogue we'd be having. I'm not buying into any sort of projections around what has happened to poverty reduction, because we don't really have the quality of data to make that analysis right now.
As Deepanshu was just mentioning, Shobhana, that this is a hotly contested election and where poverty is in a sense dominating the election narrative. Recently, after these figures were released, we saw the Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge. He said that this whole survey is an election rhetoric in a sense. And he also pointed to the Niti Aayog data that Deepanshu was also just mentioning, and he said that pinned poverty at about 11%. This survey is pointing to the Niti Aayog CEO is saying it's under 5%. So do you see the economy, jobs and poverty becoming a dominant narrative in the Lok Sabha elections going forward? Or do you see the BJP gaining from these survey results that are coming just 2 months ahead of election?
So it's basically government matching rhetoric for rhetoric. The Congress and the opposition for the past several months have sort of set up a narrative that this government does not give jobs, this government, all the benefits are down, economy is in shambles, we have high inflation rates and so on and so forth. To sort of, and also the context, we have to remember the context also while we are saying this, because the BJP and the Prime Minister has set itself a very high target of 370 seats. This target, why am I saying that it is a high target? Because the BJP has completely saturated itself in the northern belts. There are very few states where it has not won all the seats available, barring say Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, one seat. So obviously it's a very upward. The incline is very, very steep for it if it has to reach to the target that the Prime Minister has set. So to reach that target, therefore, it has to match. It has to counter everything that the opposition has, all the allegation, all the opposition narrative, and the opposition has been wanting to set a narrative of set this election in the frame of rich versus poor, that this government is supports its capitalist friends and has not been doing enough for the poor, and that is the framework within which the opposition was working. And therefore all this data that we are seeing of late, and Deepanshu will probably back me on this, in the last 10 years we have not seen enough data coming out of this government. This is the most data deficient government that we have ever had since independence.
That just what I would just mention for the audience is, if you look at youth, women in terms of their overall well-being, quality of life, and not just farmers, but if you look at rural areas generally, I think somewhere even the government, that is the party as in the BJP, is aware implicitly that a lot that is happening within these groups is not going well. You see in the finance minister's budget speech There's a lot of discussion around women, youth, employment.
These are the main
and
pillars
every,
as the BJP puts
and
it.
it was never up until this budget mentioned that these are the groups that the government has been working towards. There's a lot of discussion on schemes, there's a discussion on Make in India, manufacturing, and much of the states that are doing worst, states, I mean GSDP level, which gives you growth data on states, it gives you a picture on states are doing. Some of the states that are doing the best right now in terms of attracting investment, growth, social cohesion, social mobility is or are states like Tamil Nadu, where you have a very different structure, and the BJP has not been in power there. UP on the contrary, or Gujarat on the contrary, if you look at the numbers on healthcare, nutrition outcomes, and you see this in the consumption expenditure, the average spending that has happened on fruits, vegetables, cereals has come drastically down from 2011, which gives you an idea that there is serious a crisis of nutrition. What has gone up? Conveyance. So mobility has become more expensive, right? What has gone up? Education expense or healthcare costs. So what is really happening is that social opportunities within the current context of the government delivery system has not worked. What's really unfortunate is that the opposition has not been able to mobilize the groups that are dissent. There is clear resentment and dissentment against price hike and inflation. I mean, the RBI consumer survey data tells us very clearly that people are sick and tired of the inflationary problems. But you need a narrative around that, and and you need an election projection around that, and people will back you.
No, so I'll supplement your point here. What he's saying is that there's a lack of narrative. The opposition has not been able to construct one narrative, despite the fact that there is clear distress among various groups. And one prominent reason that I believe why this is happening is that that there is distress in various pockets. However, you have to be able to link that distress to a government that is pilfering, that is corrupt. The fact that I'm losing money, I don't have money in my pocket, but if I'm able to connect it to the fact that that my money that was supposed to be in my pocket is right now sitting in the government's pocket, and that connection somewhere the opposition has failed to make.
I mean, state level election data is telling you that there is resentment, because Modi's popularity at state level elections is clearly not the same when it is for a national election, right? Which is why state parties like TMC and others have been able to tap into it. But I think this is a conversation which should sort of lead into a larger dialogue.
So as both Shobhana and Deepanshu are mentioning that there is a need for data, and we welcome the fact that the household consumption survey data has come out, and we are getting a sense of where the economy is or is not from these figures that have come out. But there is of course a crisis that is taking place, and a lot of groups of population are facing it, as we were just mentioning: youth, farmers, women, and how this is going to play out in the elections going forward. We will be tracking that for you, and we'll be keeping a close eye on those developments. Thank you so much, Shobhana and Deepanshu, for joining us today on the Wire Wrap, and I'll see you next week on another edition. Thank you so much for watching.